You know him as James Mennie, reporter, columnist, editor at the Montreal Gazette. Good afternoon, James.
Good afternoon, Trudy. How are you?
Oh, just fine. Enjoying this Montreal summer. I'm telling you, as Kev says, don't complain now if you want the right to complain in winter and vice versa. So no complaining.
Oh, yeah, I never complain about the heat. I never, ever complain about the heat. Absolutely never. I've spent too many minus 40 wind chill days in this big chunk of God's country that, no, I never begrudge a hot summer. If it's humid, I could do with a bit less of monsoon-like rain. But apart from that, you know what? I ain't complaining.
Especially when, back in the day, if it was minus 40, we were probably standing on a street corner at 3:00 in the morning, covering a fire in some apartment in NDG. I remember,
or God help us, talking to somebody who had to work outside, asking them how they felt about being outside in minus 40 weather working.
That's it.
So, geez.
Okay.
Anyway.
Let's talk about Donald Trump. The question that you're asking today is, has Donald Trump become a factor in all political decisions in this country, not just trade? Why is this on your mind?
Well, first of all, as I speak to you, theoretically, Mark Carney, our Prime Minister, is addressing the press in Ottawa concerning today's meeting with the premiers. With Cabinet. They discussed the Middle East and Trump tariffs, which are supposed to go into effect in 48 hours' time. I have to tell you, I suspect that, with all due respect to what's happening in the Middle East, I think the whole issue with Trump is top of mind. That's the one where he's going to have to explain himself to the Canadian public. I heard some of the reactions, though, and in fact, I made up my mind about this, but I heard some of the reactions over the last half hour when you were talking about this so-called evangelical singer who was coming up to Montreal and got kicked out, and the visceral distaste for anything related to Trump that some of our listeners exhibited. I think Carney is aware of that. I think Carney's going to be very, very careful. You can't be very cold-blooded and say, well, listen, this is the best we're going to get, especially when you realize that the very idea that he got elected was based on his being perceived as the guy who could deal with Trump. But above and beyond that, I think there is a lot of emotion out there. I think people, and I heard you talking to your economist, I think people in this country are ready to go through a recession. If it means getting shed of Donald Trump, or at least, poking him in the eye, I think people are prepared to do that. People are prepared to pay higher prices than to have to keep dancing to the tune of what is clearly a narcissistic dementia patient who happens to be president of the most powerful nation on earth. I mean, it's great they've got an economy. I really thought the people around Trump, I really thought Americans would look at this anti-American individual like Donald Trump and deal with him and get rid of him, but they haven't. They appear to be reveling in it. Okay, that's our reality. But I honestly think that, and I could be completely wrong. I mean, Carney could be backing down right now, but I think I'd be very surprised if there was any idea of turning around and saying, okay, you know what, we're going to do A, B, and C. We will be hit with tariffs. Everyone's being hit with tariffs. And of course, they'll wind up being taxes on American consumers who apparently are too stupid to figure out how tariffs work. But all that said, I think in this country anyway, Mark Carney's biggest challenge is going to be to try and keep Canadian tempers, to try and keep Canadian emotion under control when it comes to dealing with Donald Trump. And let's face it, we're stuck dealing with Donald Trump for the next 4 years.
Yeah. I think you might be right that there is a little bit of tolerance for an economic downturn, because maybe not if people start losing their jobs, which is the big worry. That's a little bit different. You lose your livelihood, all of a sudden you're going to be very angry. But we're already paying higher prices, aren't we? Because if I'm boycotting, as I struggle to continue to do, American goods, like American produce, I am paying more in some cases for Canadian grown, for, the stuff from Europe, other places. I'm paying a premium for philosophical reasons. So we're already paying more. We're already showing we're willing to make that sacrifice.
Trudy, I would part company with you when you describe that as philosophical. I think we have some real skin in this game, and I think this goes beyond philosophical differences. Okay? As far as I'm concerned, Donald Trump is turning the U.S. into a hellscape, and he doesn't care what happens after him. All he's concerned about is shoving as much money down the front of his diaper-riddled pants before someone figures out how to get him out of the White House. But the fact is, he doesn't care, and this is what we have to be conscious of, as far as I'm concerned. I think we have to understand that he is perhaps the biggest threat to face this country in 50 years. And there is no doubt in my mind that unless we all stand firm, and I know it sounds very kumbaya and solidarity, but the fact is, people who stand up to Donald Trump scare the hell out of Donald Trump. It's as simple as that. And even though he has fabricated many instances of how his tariffs are working, fabricated deals with various governments, which, the governments turn around and say, actually, no, we don't have a deal with them. All this is going on. I think it's time that I think a lot of people in this country feel that, the line, we'll draw the line. He's not going to cross it. And if he does, well, he'll have to pay the consequences. But in the end, we also know that essentially Donald Trump is a coward. So the fact is, I think if we do put up enough of a brave front, and I think if we do, people say, who's just going to invade? No, I don't think he will. I think a lot of people really overestimate Donald Trump's powers of persuasion. And right now, I would say that even though you and I are talking about Donald Trump and tariffs, the main priority for Donald Trump right now is to put as much distance between him and child rapists and his association with Jeffrey Epstein. The rest is just very small potatoes, which is why I think when Donald Trump says he's not thinking about a deal with Canada right now, that's because he's busy trying to think of how to weasel out of this latest tightening noose around his neck.
I think was it in the National Post today that I read I think it was one of the columnists in the National Post said what Trump has done is desperately thrown an entire plate of spaghetti against the wall to see which strand is going to stick as the distraction from the Epstein event. So you're probably right about that.
No, but the problem is he does this every time, so people expect it. And now, and the whole idea of Taco, Trump always chickens out, that became clear when these tariffs were beginning to be applied. And it's not anyone's imagination. Traders on Wall Street knew this. And even today, Wall Street, our market's been doing pretty well. I've discussed this with Aaron several times, that our markets have been doing pretty well despite all of Trump's maundering, simply because it's clear the guy is just talking through his hat 98.9% of the time. Even today, Wall Street was kind of like in a weird kind of, we didn't go up or we didn't go down. People are waiting to see what's going to happen. But the big question as well, I guess, isn't so much how we're going to deal with it, is how is Wall Street, how is the money that Donald Trump serves how long are they going to be patient with this guy? Because the bottom line is he's not getting results. He's throwing up a lot of excuses. And everyone, especially in that particular income bracket, they really detest uncertainty.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And you know what, James, I will admit that probably once a day now, as I'm going through the news, getting ready for my shift, I find myself chanting under my breath, please don't cave. Please don't cave. Don't cave in. Carney, don't cave. That's my mantra, because I really hope Canada sticks it to them. And even it's going to be painful, I know. I don't want people to suffer and lose their jobs, but oh man, it might be easier in the long run.
I got to tell you, Trudy, I really think you've got a lot of company.
Yeah, man, maybe. All right, James, always great to talk to you. Talk to you tomorrow.
Demain.